Buddy, this is Matthew Kaseska. I'm actually in Dallas right now dealing with a security breach, so this is fresh, and we're helping a client through it. And one of the big issues, among a few, was patching. So the servers were not patched properly or automatically, as well as the workstations. And the particular virus ransomware that they got was called TrickyBot, and it's delivered by another virus called Emote. And Emote can deliver a multitude of different Trojans. And the only way it can work is if your security patching is not up to date. So if they had patching automated or pushed and enforced, if you have Windows patching on your computer and you think it's being patched, what I would recommend on your servers or your workstations is try to do a Windows update and see how much is not done. And it'll show you really that even though it's enabled, that it's really not working the way it should. So that's the big thing. And then you've got third-party patching as well. So Adobe Flash, that's a known issue. There are plenty of third-party automated patching softwares that you can put on your network that are very effective. The one that we like is LabTech. We have created something called Jack as well that does this, and then reports back and gives you KPIs on all your servers and workstations. And then that way you don't have to guess what has it and what doesn't. But there's a lot of tools out there that can do that. The other item, too, is your firewalls, routers, and switches. The client in question that's here in Dallas, they're all of those things, firewall, router, and switches, were at least 12 months out of date. And if you don't know Cisco or your firewall or anything like that, hire someone to come in and do it. It's important. And the firmware as well, on not just patching, but there's firmware as well on the servers and on the firewalls, routers, and switches that need to be updated. It's important because that's how these hackers control your equipment. Some other protective measures that are very helpful is if your software, let's say there's a third-party software that you use, that the only way it's going to work is if you give local admin rights to your users. That is against best business practices. Now, you're like, well, how do we get around that, right? That happens all the time. You've got this, third-party software like with banking or, other industries and healthcare, and you have to have it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. There are very inexpensive pieces of software that will only allow that software to run as admin, so you don't have to give up the keys of the castle. Okay, that's another big item there. You have to make sure that you have an antivirus, an anti-malware, and an anti-ransomware. Most people have antivirus. There are some really good ones out there. ESET, Viper is a good one. Viper is one of the ones that we're using right now, and it catches that TrickyBot. You can get a lot of these softwares now with all three of those facets, the malware and the ransomware integrated, but you have to make sure that it's automated. And then the other suggestion I would give you is make sure you do full scans at night and make sure it doesn't interfere with your backups. And then there are also tools that you can integrate with your database that checks the validity of the calls on that database, that is an actual user and it's not a rogue user. And that's something, too, that we recommend if you have a highly sensitive or regulated environment. And that way, if there is any suspicious activity, you'll be warned. There's also some really good third-party Artificial intelligence software out there. Some is a software, some are appliances. And what they can do is they look at anomalies within your company. Deneen had mentioned that a lot of the breaches are internal, and that's true. I'll give you, for instance, there was a furniture company. There was the marketing director. She went on vacation. She went on some free Wi-Fi. Phones can be hacked. She had an Android. Their Androids are more easily hacked than a iPhone, but they're both hackable. And she came back to the office unknowingly, and this virus that was on her Android connected to their databases and started uploading those to like a Russian website. It instantly got shut down by our software because it was an anomaly, and then it gives the IT department some time to recover and look at that and say, okay, what happened? So she's still functional, but that one aspect of what was going on was shut down. The other thing that it tried to do was take all of her contacts and send out an infected Adobe Acrobat file. And it would have gone to clients, it would have gone internally, it would have just festered. So you can imagine if you don't prepare for this sort of thing, because it will happen, it's just when, you've got two scenarios. One of which I am dealing with right now. This is day 6. Of their databases corrupt and everything else, or it would have just been a blip on the screen that they could have taken care of if they would have prepared properly ahead of time. So it's a big deal. Better firewall utilization. There are some really good firewalls out there. SonicWall, you've got Cisco, obviously, you've got WatchGuard, and another layer, and I recommend multiple layers, is you can buy the filters that scan all the email coming in and out, or if you have a spam filter, like in the cloud, where it does what's called a sandbox, it actually opens up all the attachments. And then that person will get the email, but that attachment will be null and void. So look at either a spam filter that does a sandbox is key. And then if you have a firewall, you can also add email filtering on that. It's very, very helpful. But again, I can't stress enough that you need multiple layers because this stuff is changing all the time. And you definitely need something that is a zero-day threat filter. So a lot of these virus protections and things like that, let's say even Viper, when we first ran Viper on the servers that we're working on right now, it didn't catch it. The next day it did. So if that was the case, it would have knocked it down, but it would have been 24 hours of spreading or encryption or whatever. So you want to have multi-layer, and then you want to have a zero-day protection along with that. Ransomware, this is what we're dealing with right now with this TinyBot, and it's nasty. I think everybody's heard of it. Basically, it goes in, you double-click on a file or a link, it downloads a probe, it keylogs your username and passwords, and it did that at the administrative level. And then it had the keys to the castle, and it starts dropping files and folders to probe even more throughout. And then once it feels like it's got the entire network, it very rapidly starts to encrypt everything, like within 24 hours. And then you can't get to anything. And then if you want to get it back, you either have to restore and lose days of work. So in our instance, it was 3 days of work. Or let's say it's a day. That's a whole full day of your office not being productive. And what does that look like as far as the cost? And then, or you pay the ransom. And now what they're doing with ransomware is they'll look at your domain, and they'll find out what your top line revenue is on your company, and that ransom will be associated with your revenue. So if it's grandma, they're going to charge grandma $250. If it's a Fortune 500 company or a police station, or which has happened, or City Hall, they're going to charge you tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that just be very aware of that. And then user rights, single sign-on. If you're accessing these databases with single sign-ons, that's not good. You want dual sign-ons. So you've got things like Anywhere Connect from Cisco, or and then you marry that with another program called like Duo, and that is a great security solution, but it should be dual authentication. If they're just RDPing or remote desktoping into a server to gain access to this, that is a huge security hole. Even VPNs can be a security hole if it's single sign-on or a single level of security. And also the other thing too is you should silo your shares are a big deal. You shouldn't have everybody has access to all shares. You should have those compartmentalized by department, and only those departments can see those shares, because that's how this ransomware spreads. So if everybody can see everything, then everything's going to be infected. If it's just one department, then that one department got knocked down. So then you have to just work on that one department, and not everybody else is out of pocket. So, and then just be very careful with administrative access or high level of access to certain files. Right? Sometimes they only need read-only, and that's what you should do. And then make sure you lock your server room and limit personal access. And that's more of an internal hacking thing and just safety in general. Endpoint security, documented protocols to secure endpoints no matter where the user accesses the info, like I was saying, whether it's from their desktop, mobile phone, laptop. You have to have a policy, and you have to be very careful on how you allow them to access that data. Just make sure it's secure and that there's encryption involved. And the patches, again, can't say that enough. What else we got here? The local network, router management, your SSIDs, make sure that in some of the smaller companies, like Comcast or Xfinity, they have this guest Wi-Fi. Make sure you shut that off. Even the guest Wi-Fis should have a hard to guess type of password, right? Alphanumeric, exclamation point, @sign. It could be a little bit of a pain in the neck, but it's for your safety. And then those should change every month, because think about it, most companies, and this has happened with a company that we were brought in to help, there was someone that was there for some sales meeting, and this person had poor intentions. They came outside the building, or they were in their car. They attached to their network and took a bunch of data. They did a brute force attack on the network and took a bunch of data. They didn't realize it was actually one of their competitors. So just be aware. Most people are nice, but there's a few not nice people out there. Mobile device management. You should have some kind of mobile device management software on your phones. If you have a business account, a lot of times they'll just throw that in, or for a little bit of money, they'll add that to it. But the mobile devices should be, if they're given by the company, they should be managed by the company. So only certain apps can be downloaded, things like that, because there are certain applications on the, I know on Apple, they're much more strict on who can develop an app. With the Androids, it's a little more loose, it's open source. So they may unknowingly download an app that is really just malware and gathering information. So whether it's like, let's say, a blackjack app, and I have that on my phone, a gambling app or whatever, and you don't know. So, but you want to be able to lock down that screen and lock down who downloads applications, things like that. It's a big deal. File sharing is mentioned here. Not only mobile device management, but again, on the network, you have to be careful not only who gets to see what, but how it is shared on the server itself, at the server level, because you can, put things in in categories as far as department's concerned, but if you don't do it properly on a server, it won't matter. It'll be able to hop right over. So that's another thing that you really have to look forward to and look at with your admin. So make sure all the updates are done again. Install encryption if it's a big deal as far as how people access the information or where they store it. And then you should always log actions. There should be auditing enabled on the servers. You may not think you need it. And the other thing, too, when you do that, make sure that the log gets overwritten but not too soon, because if you don't, you'll run out of disk space, so be careful with that. Educate employees and create best business practices. Do a lunch and learn. Say, okay, guys, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. If you are found violating this, unfortunately, we'll have to write you up, and it has to be serious because your whole company is depending on it. And again, I'm here helping a company that is it's a well-established company. It is a large company, and they are it's a serious deal, and they're not able to service their clients. And as a business owner, if I can't service my clients, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to look to find someone else that can, because they have a job they have to do for their clients. So just know that preventative maintenance is much cheaper and more effective than being reactive and thinking that it's not going to happen to you, because there's a good chance it will.